Danska kyo saimina kitam skat na wow. Ernitiga sun asini watsi was skaigan utinia. Once again I greet you all. My name is Aaron. Today I want to talk a bit about VTA verb conjugation. But first, of course, a disclaimer. I am not a fluent speaker. I'm a self-study language learner, nêhiyawêwin, and this is just some stuff I've learned that I've been taught that I want to share with you if it's helpful. I'm trying to do more content geared towards people who want to go beyond the basics, so let me know if this is helpful for you. Okay, quick review. I did another video recently on the different verb types in nêhiyawêwin and how they intersect with animacy. So this video today we're specifically going to talk about those VTA verbs, the transitive animate verbs in nêhiyawêwin. If you're not familiar with the verb types, jump over, have a look at that video, or I go through the different types and some examples and whatnot in there. So. Okay, first, before we can talk about VTA, we need to talk about pronouns in the language. If you already know your pronouns, this will be a quick review. Feel free to skip ahead. Otherwise, let's dive into it. So, the first pronoun, the first person pronoun, nêhiyawêwin, is me. You'll see this marked as 1S, S meaning singular. There's only one of me. And so in nêhiyawêwin, this is niya. Okay? Second person singular. Second person two, S being singular. One of you, that's kia. Kia is you. The third person singular in nêhiyawêwin is wiya. Wiya. Now, there's another third person in nêhiyawêwin, and they call this one the obviate or obviative. So the main first person is proximate or closer, I guess, and the obviative is the further third person. Sometimes some people say the fourth person, but you'll see it marked this way if you're in any of the literature. They use this little apostrophe to demarcate that other third person. And I'm not aware of a pronoun for this position, but it is there. So in English, if I say us, that's kind of ambiguous. I could mean us but not you, or I could mean all of us, but we can differentiate in nêhiyawêwin. Us but not you is niyanan. Whoops. Niyanan. And you'll usually see that as a one plural. Us but not you. I hear this as niyanan sometimes. Niyanan. Alright. So the two plural, all of you, if I just say you, again in English, it's ambiguous. It could mean just you or it could mean all of you. But in nêhiyawêwin we say kiawao. Kiawao, all of you. All of us, you'll see this marked with a 2-1-P. It's like the inclusive plural. Sometimes you'll see 1-2-P or one inclusive. Okay, and this is kiano, all of us. And then there's the 3P, them, plural them, more than one, and that's wiawao. And then there's this idea of, I wanted to put this in there because you'll see it. When you see this X, which is one of the positions in the VTA verb system, and it kind of just means someone. You'll see it either referred to as ex actor or unspecified actor, somebody unspecified, ex actor. And I don't know if this, I think maybe awiya might be appropriate here, like somebody, someone. So quick review. All right, all of the single pronouns. Niya, that's me. Kia, that's you. Wiya is the third person, that other person. The plural pronouns. Niyanan, us but not you. Kiano, that's all of us. Kiawao, that's all of you. Wioa, all of them, and then that awiya is just somebody. All right, so next, you don't really need to know this. It's just something interesting about the language, this kind of hierarchy when it comes to the pronouns and the way they're used in VTAs. So there's two things that are kind of cool here. One's important, and that is the directionality. So there's the direction one way that verbs go, and then there's the inverse of that. And they're kind of laid out in this way because that's just the way they, when we get into conjugation, the inverse stands out in some ways, and it might be helpful for studying. So let's look at some examples of this. All right. So if I say you love me, notice that the marker, the pronoun marker for yuke is at the front of this word, and the in at the end denotes that the direction is from you to me. Kesage hin. Now we can argue whether this is inverse or direct or whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it's interesting to note that ke is always at the front, and it's the in that means you to me. Kesage hin, you love me. If we look at the inverse of that, ke is still at the front, your pronoun, and it's itin at the end that indicates me to you. Kesage ten, I love you. We see the same if I say I love that person. Ne, my pronoun comes at the front, ne, and it's ao at the end. Ne sage how, I love that person. And if we invert that, my pronoun ne is still at the front, and ik at the end implies the inverse of that. Ne sage hik. If we look at the third person positions, the direct, if this is John and his son, John ego John okosa, we say sage heo, John sage heo okosa. John loves his son. But if we do the inverse of that, then we can say sagehego. It's the suffix again, that ik sagehik or sagehiko. John sagehiko okosa. John's son loves him. And I threw this one in just because I mentioned that exposition before. This means my pronouns at the front, ne, and this ending, igoin, it kind of just means somebody. So what this means, nisag higoin, means I am loved. So it's that VTA verb, but it's been changed to mean that we don't know who it is. Nisag higoin, like I'm loved, in general, I guess. So I threw this in just because, again, you don't need to know this. It's not really that important. It's just interesting. All of these twos, including that 2-1 plural inclusive, kind of fall in this column. And then the 1 and the 3s, they all sort of follow this hierarchy. And I wanted to point out that there is like a further obviate position. I don't know if there's a specific term for that or not. I'm not really sure. And you may or may not have guessed it, but there are interactions in VTAs between almost all of these. Now, this is a little bit contrived because some of these arrows don't actually exist. But the point being that, all of these will have different inflections or different ways that you change that verb depending on which one you're talking about. Which is probably a really good time to introduce our chart. So, this is a chart that was created by a language learner. His name is Ben Godden. He's a learner of nêhiyawêwin. Yeah, I think nêhiyawêwin. TH dialect. I'm not learning TH, so but this is available in TH and Y. You can, if you go to Cree Literacy Network, you can just Google Cree Literacy Network summary paradigm tables, I think, and you'll find the page that has this on it. So we're going to focus on this section right here. And I'll break this down in a minute into just a little bit so we can figure out exactly how this works. But I will note that the other tables for VAI, VTI, and VII are available on this, but we're going to focus on the one up top today. Yeah, so let's have a look at that now. So I'm going to take this little chunk here and this little bit here so that we can just look at one particular section. And just note that these rows correspond to each other in this way. All right, let's flip over here. So the first thing we need to do if we're going to conjugate a verb is we need to know that if we're looking up a verb in the dictionary, and we'll use that verb love, you know, somebody loves someone. So if we look it up in the dictionary, what we're going to see is this form, okay? Sageheo. And that means that person loves someone, or that person loves them. And so if you look at this chart, you'll notice that there are three sections here, here, and here that have a yellow box. And the reason that's yellow is because that's the one you're going to find in the dictionary, is that third person. If you're just reading materials or whatever, you know, it could be any of these or whatever, but if you're looking up words specifically, you'll find that third person word because that's the one that they picked to list in the dictionary. So with that, if we take our verb, sageheo, and we identify the inflection part, this part on the end, we see that that matches, that's our inflection right there. That literally means that person loves, that's what that inflection means. And what we have left is this bit right here. That bit matches this little bit right there, and that's the bit that we can put in any of these boxes. Okay? So let's take an example. We're going to move this out of the way. Okay, put it down there. All right, I'll grab a blue. So I want to say, to use our earlier example again, I love that person. So I'm the first person. I want to say I love that person. Okay. So what I'm going to do is find those. I'm going to find those on my chart. So here's me. Here's that person. Okay. I'm actually should back up a little bit before I go too far. There are two boxes here. There's this one and there's this one. And it's important to note that the first box is this column here. And the second box is this column here. Okay? And the same is true for the orange ones. This box is this column here, and this box is this column here. So these are your singular, and these are your plural in the direct direction. And these are your singular, and these are your plural in the inverse direction. So if we want to say direct, I love that person, then I'm going to take ne, sage, and it's 3s, so I'm going to take this box here. Ne, I'm going to put my sage in there. Sage. And then I need ow. Ne sage how. That means I love that person. Now if I want to say I love them, more than one, so now I'm talking about me and that person, then I need this box. Now there's a rule here on this chart for a couple of these boxes. When I want to use the plural, I need to include both of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab all of this right here. Ne, my verb, ow, and then ak. So if I put sage, so I end up with nisage hawak. Nisage hawak. Sorry, my writing's a little messy there. My messing's a little righty. My writing's a little messy. I love them. That's plural. All right. So now, if I want the inverse, I want to say that person loves me. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing. Here's me. Here's that person. I'm talking about the inverse this time, so I need the orange boxes. And I'm looking for ni and this one. This box and this one here. So I'm going to have ni. That one there. And I'm going to put my nêhiyawêwin. That one loves me. Let's do one more. I want to say they all love me. So now I'm going to take this one, and now I've got to put both of these boxes together. Okay, so I'll grab all of that. All right. They all love me. Now I need that wak on the end. Nêhiyawêwin. They all love me. And that's how you use this chart. Let me clean up my mess here. That's how you use that. If I want the direct verb, I go this way. Singular, plural. If I want the inverse, I go this way. Singular, plural. Nêhiyawêwin, nêhiyawêwak. Nêhiyawêwin, nêhiyawêwak. Let's do one more example. One more example. One more example. Let's look up a different word. I want to use the word hears. I'm going to look up that person hears. That one right there. Pihtoeo. Pihtoeo. So let's use that verb. All right. That one. Now I write it this way because there are no gendered pronouns in Nihywin, but this is the way that you'll see in the dictionary. It doesn't mean he or she, it means them, but this is the way they, the dictionary has it. So here's, and then someone. All right, so first thing we do, identify our inflection, that eo bit on the end. So that leaves our interestingly enough, this is the imperative or the command form. Pehto, which would be like hear that person. Pehto. Maybe that one's not very useful. They're like wihtamo or something like tell them. Wihtamo, tell that person. So let's do, I'm going to do this one here. We all hear that person. All right. So this is easy. That person. So this is our singular column here. So I'm just going to grab this little bit there. So let's see. We all hear that person. I've got ge. Oops. So put pehto in there. Pehtoano. Pehtoano. We hear that person. Now what about we hear them, plural? Yep, you guessed it. We add ak on the end. Oops, if I could spell. Gepehtoanoak. Gepehtoanoak. They all hear us all. Let's do the inverse of that now. All right. I want to say that one hears us, that one there. So now we're using this column. So it's going to look like this bit and that one right there. So 2, 1P, This is the inverse, that person. So we end up with ge. Now, something interesting is going to happen here. I'm going to put peto. No, keep doing that. I'm going to put peto in there. But there's a rule here, and generally speaking, when you run into this where you have, this is our one word, peto, and then we have an I at the beginning of this word. And generally speaking, what's going to happen is when you have AW and an I at this boundary right here, that's going to turn into a long A, generally speaking. Okay, you can look these up if you're not sure. Like if you go to itwêwina or whatever, you can go double check the conjugations for these. But generally, once you get the hang of which ones go where, it's not too bad. So actually, this is going to be a long A like that. Whoops. Kepehtagono, kepehtagono, kepehtagono. That one hears us. And then, if we want the plural, we need to grab both of those. So that's going to be all of us, all of them, kepehtagonoak. They all hear all of us. Kepehtagonoak. Yeah, that's good. All right. Before we wrap up, there's a few more things that I want to go over. Just back to this chart really quick. So, looking at the top box, we see that our pronouns are here. Us, these are all of us, and these are all of them. So this is one set. So there's a whole nother set here that is the third person and the other third person, and the inverse of those. And then there's one more set down here. Whoops, I'll let that go. One more set down here. This is called the you and me set, they'll call that. So this is all of the yous, and this is all of the me's and us's. And so one thing that you'll notice is that when you're in this set up top, when you get into the plurals, there are these plural boxes that you add together here, and in the conjunct here, and the conjunct inverse here. But when you get into these last boxes, this is the future conditional box. So it's like witamoage, when I tell that one. Witamoage, that'd be this one here. Witamoage. Wapamage, when I see that one, if I see that one. So when you do the plural of those, you don't add the boxes together for this particular set. There are some common bits in there, like we see in every case, you know, when you add these together, it's nice and clean. But in these ones, uk is in there, but that I changes to a W or whatever, you know, this T changes to a C. So that's just the way it worked out. When you do the plurals on these ones, you just take the plural box, you don't add them together. And that's the same with these inverse ones over here. All right. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about a couple more rules that you're going to run into, because there are a few. So the first one you might notice is this little box has an A, B, and a C. So what's that all about? You need to know that there are some scenarios when letters will change. Things will change on you. So the first one we're going to talk about is this A box right there. What that says is when there is a T right here, right before that I, then the T is going to become an S. So here's an example. There's this verb. Let me grab a pen. There's this verb, itwêwin, which means that person says to them. That person says to them. So if I conjugate that for this particular box, that person is saying to me, then it would be tempting to do this. It, but that's not correct. the way we would actually say that is that T becomes an I. A sit. Another example, pig squateo. I wouldn't say a pig squatted. I would say a pig squassit. They're speaking to me. So that's one example. There's another rule here in this particular one. When we combine those boxes together, and that's why this little C is on the end, then that T is going to turn into a C. So we see that C is on the end. That means when those boxes are combined together, that T is going to turn into a C. So using our same example, if I wanted to say they, remember this is the plural box here, they say to me, it would be tempting to say aesthetic, but that would, again, would be incorrect. We have to change that T to a C, and so that's going to become aesthetic. So that's one set of changes. There's one more change on there. Let me just clean this up. And that is the B change. The B change, we talked about before how often if you have AW, whoops, let me do that the right way here. AW and I, nope, those are backwards. When you have I, yeah, AWI, no, that was right. AW and I. At the boundary, that's going to become a long A. But in this particular case, when there is a AWI right here, it's going to stay AWI. Okay? So let's have an example of that. Let's use our example from before. A, B, though if I say, I'm hearing that person. No, that person's hearing me. That's what, if I'm hearing them would be a petoak. But I want to say that person is hearing me, it would be tempting, if you use that same rule, you would have a petat, which is not correct. That's not what that means. You would have to say a petout, a petout. That person's hearing me. So that's what that B rule means, is that AWI, when those come together, are going to stay as AWI. We'll see that again. Let's go back down here and look at one more example. Down here, we see that A and B are both here. Okay. So there's going to be that A rule. Let me go back up and have a look. That T is going to be an S, and AWI is going to be AWI. There's a case where that doesn't happen. Let's look at that, because it's interesting right here. All right. In this case, this one here with me and you, looking at this set, if I say, you hear me this way, we're going to use this box, we end up with this here. Kepetawin. Because that B rule is there, then that AWI stays AWI. Maga. If I say, I hear you, now we're using this other box. There's no B rule there. So we're going to say, Kepetatin. Because that A, W, and that I right there are going to collapse to that long A. Kepetatin. Kepetatin. Yeah, we hear you. Kepetatinan. I hear all of you. Kepetatinawao. Hegse no te wapatai go kanuts. That's all I want to show you today. I feel like that's a lot. This is probably a really long video. I hope that's been helpful, and that helps you to study Feel free to leave questions or comments. Reach out to me if you have any questions about this. And until the next time, saimina kitatam skatna wa kitam e wapam tagok egwa exipitama.